So curfew is back.
Yeah.
Could you tell me a little bit about if you think that curfew, despite homeless people being exempted from it, if you think that it will continue this time around to negatively impact them?
Well, we're going to wait and see. Okay. It certainly, it's good news to hear that the homeless are exempt from it. What's the complicated detail is there's a number of people who are actually, they are homeless, but they don't appear homeless. And so in practice, we'll see how this works out. And I will know because within a month or two, the question will be, do I have a number of people who are homeless here giving me tickets to deal with? So I'm going to find out. But certainly the last time around, I had people who were essentially homeless, but didn't appear that way, ending up with tickets and then having to deal with those tickets. And certainly there's an article in Le Devoir about that. Some of our clients here are showing up with $1,500 tickets that they'll never be able to pay. And yeah, so certainly it, but I am happy that at least in theory the homeless should be exempt. So that's a good sign. Now we'll see in practice if that actually holds.
And does resilience help with the process of contesting these tickets?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful.
So whatever needs to be done, and that's an ever evolving process itself, but it's basically volunteer legal assistance.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. And does the staff, your staff having COVID and it being kind of I guess a shortage of help, does curfew kind of add another layer of difficulty to this, or do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, there's an upside and a downside to the curfew. The upside is apparently people socially gather less in the evening if there's a curfew. But at the same time, when there's a curfew, there's always the chance that the homeless will be unfairly affected by this. And so, I mean, in the end, we're gonna see how this plays out. Hopefully, hopefully there's some common sense utilized and that officers who approach homeless people after hours do their due diligence in finding out if the person really is homeless, and there's ways, there's questions you can ask to discern whether someone is homeless. And where it gets complicated is you have people who survive by doing things like couch surfing. And the question is, so is this person homeless or not? And so there's a gray area, right? And so hopefully for the people who are in this sort of gray zone, that discernment is used and they're not unfairly penalized.
Thank you so much. Last time we spoke was after the death of Elisa P. And considering that she died after being moved out of the STM words,
the metro station.
Exactly. Yeah. And isolation kind of played a role in her death. Do you think that curfew causing isolation and maybe homeless people, even though they are exempted, maybe trying to hide from cops, these type of things, do you think that isolation is a concern?
I mean, it for the homeless it is. And if you're isolated as a homeless person, it tends to mean that you have other risks other than COVID which are at play. So for example, if you're by yourself sleeping at night in an alleyway, there is a physical risk to your body. You could be robbed, you could be raped, you could be assaulted, there's a number of things that could happen to you. You could freeze to death. And so, yes, COVID is not the only risk. And there's a sense in which at a time like this, you have to ask really hard questions. Like one of the agonizing questions we've had to ask as an organization is, who do we prioritize? In other words, it's a tempting time where middle class values can tend to win out. And most of us would say, oh, no, I prioritize the most marginalized populations. I wouldn't do that. But when you test that theory, you find out that often in practice, people tend to look out for themselves. And we've seen this as an organization. Like, for example, we were closed for a few days after Christmas, and we were due to open up on the 3rd of January. And I had, we at the same time, we had a growing number of COVID cases, where we had around 6 COVID cases among the staff. And I had a number of staff saying to me, I don't think we should open, because this puts the staff at risk. And they're absolutely right. It does put the staff at risk. And yet, when we stayed open, on my way into work, in the alleyway behind our building, it's minus 18, and there's a homeless guy sleeping out there, and with just a jacket, trying to get near a heat vent. And I can tell you, he was pretty happy that we were opening. So here's the hard question: whose rights get priority? The staff and their health and safety, or the most marginalized population, the actual homeless who don't have an apartment and a salary? And you have to choose. Yeah, you have to choose. It's not both. It's not, can't we all just love each other and sing Kumbaya? No, you have to choose. And somebody's going to get priority. And in a place like Resilience, I have to say to the staff, it's not you. It's not me. It's the most marginalized. And that's a hard position to take. People think they like that right up until it involves them. And then they realize, maybe I'm not so much of an advocate after all. And so, yeah, it's a tough time though, but you have to make very difficult decisions. Who do you prioritize? And yes, organizations will be tested on this point. And most actually will tend to, middle class values will tend to win out. I have a right to health and safety. There you have it. I have rights. Yes, you have rights. Congratulations. And for most, that will be what wins out. And for most, you'll hear lots about self-care. I'm at home, isolating, implementing self-care. Good for you. You're looking after yourself. Good thing that you're, caring about yourself. But, often the bigger narrative, is not investigated. And the larger narrative is, if you're an advocate, if you're advocating for the most marginalized, that means there's certain sacrifices that come with that. If you're truly an advocate, you will make sacrifices. And if you don't like sacrifices, get out of the realm of advocacy, because there's no place for you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Is there anything that the government can do to kind of reduce this role of picking who gets priority?
Yeah, it's a real frustrating point. The government will help. They'll send public health to come and police us all. But they won't send staff to keep the Raphael Andre tent open or to keep Resilience Montreal open. And when they do send money, it won't be that much. And so, generally speaking, the government can be pretty frustrating, because they'll come to police you, but not to help you. And that can get really tiresome. And so, yeah. And even like today, literally today, like as we speak, there's a meeting going on. And the question is, will the Raphael Andre tent remain open? Will we have enough staff to keep the doors open another day? And there'll be either a yes or a no. And what's really going to determine it is, do we have enough staff to open the doors and be able to operate? And so at this point, it's not going to help to just send public health around to inspect and see how far away the lounge chairs are from each other to make sure that everyone's 2 meters apart. What we need is enough staff to operate, and so unfortunately, yeah, the sort of help you get from the government is often very slow, and often not what you actually need. And that's definitely frustrating, especially when, the people who are here at a time like this are making significant sacrifices. I have a worker here today who just had COVID. Now his kids have COVID. And he has the question, do I stay at work to keep the place open, or do I go home to look after my kids who have COVID? It's a tough one, And so there are tough decisions to be made.
Thank you so much. I just have one last question, if you don't mind, and then I'll let you go. Just in regards to what you were discussing before, with isolation and marginalized communities, do you think that it's more difficult for homeless people who, I guess, who are Inuit, maybe ones who have substance abuse, maybe in particular women, with the added aspect of, higher rates of sexual violence, things like this? Maybe do they come into play at a more negative rate with curfew?
Yeah, in practice, they're screwed. That's the truth. Okay, so just to not beat around the bush. In practice, localized resources shut down, they're screwed. What do? They try and stay warm in the metro, but guess what? The metro uses COVID as an excuse to say, we're looking after public health, and they use that as an excuse. The security, I watch it happen myself regularly around Atwater, where I'll see a person trying to stay warm just inside the entrance of a mall, which goes to the metro, and they'll be hiding there, and here comes the security. I'm sorry, man, we have to worry about the health of everybody, so out you go into the cold. And that happens now more than ever, and will probably increase during the period of curfew. And so in that sense, yes, the people who are the most marginalized are likely to get screwed. And so will that, like, security guard, for example, use some common sense and say, hey, I'll tell you what, I'll go get my car and drive you to a resource? Oh, no. That's not in his job description. So, we couldn't involve any humanity in this. We'll just send them out the door, and it's not our problem anymore. It's somebody else's. And this gets tiresome, as you can probably tell from my tone.
Definitely. I'm so sorry that you're bearing the weight of this burden, but I appreciate to see you doing this work, as I know many others do.
It's frustrating, but you know what? The people who are here are very appreciative, and I've had a lot more volunteers lately among the homeless community who are pitching in various ways to help out, and that's a really exciting dynamic to see, where you have like almost like a grassroots movement occurring among the homeless, where they're saying, okay, the government's going to screw us, but you know what? We're going to look out for each other. And that, you say, well, there still is some humanity in this after all.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you for your time. I wish you best of luck, and
thank you.
Hoping for your safety.
Thanks. I'll let you know when I have COVID. Surely it won't be long.
Oh boy.